Hey everyone, Art Burns here, wishing you well today. So, if you've read many books on parenting, you've probably come across, or maybe you've come across, the term attunement, right? What attunement is, it's enormously, powerfully important for the development of a child. And it's also important for the connection between the parent and the child, which makes it all the more important for the development of the child because there's so much research that shows that that connection is just vital. It's just vital. So what attunement is, and this is really very widely researched and studied. I mean, through many different researchers and doctors, but particularly I could point you to some work of Dr. Daniel Siegel along with Dr. Tina Payne Bryson. They've written a couple of really amazing books that go into what attunement is and what attachment means to parents, and also the work of Dr. Gabor Mate along with Dr. Gordon Newfield. Okay, again, amazing work these folks have done about really understanding and explaining this attunement, right? So attunement is something. It's very simple. It's basically like it sounds, right? You're tuning in to your child's emotions. Okay, that's essentially what it means. What it means is that you're getting into a level of understanding of your children that goes beneath or deeper than their behavior, right? And eventually, what that means is that you're seeing the world as the parents as the child sees the world, right? So you're getting to a really empathic level of understanding, right? And when we do this, right, one of the things that is really so important about this, now believe me, attunement starts when children are weeks old, right? When a very young infant looks up at his or her parents' eyes, right? They're looking for a connection, right? They're looking for a facial expression or a locking of the eyes. Somebody else who studies this also from a different sort of angle, not even a parenting angle, is Daniel Goleman, who writes about emotional intelligence and social intelligence, right? So, and that's how young emotional intelligence starts to form, right? And it has a lot to do with this sort of dynamic of attunement, right? And so what you're doing when you are attuning with a child, again, you're connecting with that child on a deep level, right? And what this ultimately does, now again, it starts when the child is weeks old, right? But it carries on. The importance of attunement carries on until at least the start of adolescence, right? And this is very important. And this is actually the focus of the Dr. Gordon Newfield, who writes with Dr. Gabor Mate. This is the essence of his work, right? Is that he talks about the fact that if the kids don't have this connection, this attunement with their parents, what they do is they look for it from other kids, right? And then the problem with that is that the other kids are still also very much emotionally in development, just like the parent's child is, right? And so the problem there is that the kids, the child's peers at school or the playground, whatever, they don't have the concept or the capacity for an unconditional love the way that parents do, right? So that attunement is never really there. It's never really full. So when the children are looking for that attunement, they're really generally not going to find it, but they're going to find something that they're going to use as a substitute, which is ultimately going to cause more harm than good, right? And so again, that's I'd be more than happy if you're in the Denver area. I can lend you some of those books right off my bookshelf. But I'd certainly give you some titles if you want. Just send me an email and I'll be more than happy to send those off to you. But the reason I bring up attunement, right, is that again, for all the parents watching this video, it is vitally important. And if you haven't, if you're not familiar with it, I would love to talk to you about it because it's very, again, I don't know how many times I can say how vitally important it is. And in my own life, I've seen the difference, because I wasn't very well attuned to my children in their early lives, but I've become more so recently, and the benefits are very easy to see. So the good news is that it's never too late, right? It's not. You can certainly start where you are and make an enormous impact in your child's developmental life. But essentially essentially what you're doing is you're becoming more, like I said, empathic, right? You're giving your child the feeling and the understanding that your child has an ally in this life, right? The ally in you. It doesn't mean, I know a lot of people who are parents, they say, well, we're not supposed to be friends, we're supposed to be parents, and I get that, and this doesn't sort of violate that kind of concept. But what this does is just, again, gives the children a reassurance that somebody is there that really feels them and understands them. And how good does that feel as an adult, right? If you have someone, whether it's a spouse or a sibling or your parents or a colleague or a friend who you feel just really gets you, right? How good does that feel, right? Because again, this life can be scary, it can be hard. And so the more we feel as though we have someone who kind of understands us on that level, on that deeply emotional level, right? Understands that can see when we're having a hard time, can see when we're happy, when we're not happy, and helps us to sort of process all of that, right? That's enormously valuable, isn't it? So, again, the reason I bring this up is or not again, I haven't really said this yet, but but the reason I do bring this up is because, while this attunement with our children, right, is very, very important. And just as empathy is important to our relationships with everyone in our lives, right? Empathy is a key domain of emotional intelligence, right? And emotional intelligence is basically everything when it comes to interpersonal relationships, right? Whether it's with a child or it's with a colleague or with a family member or just, I often like to point out even a police officer pulling us over for a little roadside chat. These things are very, very important, right? Emotional intelligence is enormously effective in all senses of communication, right? And interpersonal relationships. But the reason I bring up attunement specifically, and this actually comes from Dr. Dan Siegel. I was reviewing a seminar I had attended, a recording of a seminar I had attended a couple of years back, that he talks about mindfulness in terms of internal attunement, right? This is one of the benefits of mindfulness, right? Is an internal attunement with ourselves, right? And this is, again, the idea of attunement is with parents and children is essentially the ability to see past the behavior, right? So past just the automatic reaction that you have to a child's behavior, which for all you parents out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Like the child raises his or her voice, we have a certain reaction. The child knocks over a glass of juice, we have a certain reaction, right? And we've also trained ourselves when the child says thank you and please, we have a reaction, right? So these are behavioral dynamics, right? Like the child does this, we do that. This, that, it goes on and on and on and on, right? But what happens is that becomes just this sort of automatic pattern, right? And only when we can get deeper than that can we really start to make a difference in the in the emotional sort of experience of the children, right? And so the same thing happens with us on an internal level, right? And this is very, very important, almost probably just as much, if not more important, to the attunement of the children, and it will inform your attunement to your children, right? It will, what I'm talking about here, that practicing mindfulness and developing an internal attunement to ourselves will actually facilitate the attunement that you could have with your children. Okay, and this is where it's very, very important. This is why a lot of times when I'm talking to parents, developing mindfulness as a parent is one of the most valuable things you can do, right? Because again, it's not only the emotional intelligence aspect, it's also the ability to be present with your children. It's also the ability to be patient, to be, which we all know, if you're a parent, you know how valuable patience is, right? Or how fleeting and sometimes unattainable patience is. Well, when you practice mindfulness, you develop the traits of mindfulness within yourself. Patience is something that comes as a natural sort of byproduct of mindfulness, right? And so does, again, this inner attunement that we have, right? So mindfulness essentially is the ability, is the practice of paying attention to what's happening as it's happening and doing so without judgment, right? And so when we can do that, right, when we really pay attention to our moment to moment experiences, right, both externally and internally, right, and we do so without judgment, what we do is we gain an understanding, of what's happening around us, right, and within us, right, and within us is the part that is very important. Yesterday I talked about in the video, again talking about Daniel Siegel, Dr. Siegel. I mean, I'm a big fan of his. Uh, he talked about how one of the traits of mindfulness that was compiled by Ruth Baer in 2006, right? That one of these was the ability to sort of narrate our own experiences, right? To kind of see what's going on inside of us and to be able to narrate that, right? So that's where a level of attunement with ourselves comes in, right? So we see more than just our behavior. We see more than just our automatic reactions to things. In fact, what we do is we see where those automatic or those reactions are automatic, right? And in that process, that's when we can again dig deeper, right? We can dig deeper. We can understand why we have these automatic reactions. We question them, we challenge them, and in that questioning and challenging, we learn from them. And when we learn from them, we gain a level of understanding and a knowledge that we can then use to guide ourselves through this often catastrophic thing that we call the human life, right? And so this doesn't only just help us. I mean, it does. It helps us enormously, right? Like to be able to understand yourself on this deeply emotional level, and to be able to use that understanding to guide you away from the stress, to guide you away from the troublesome emotions that cause damage in your life, right? Whether it's interpersonal damage or just internal damage, right? Which often will result in things like maladaptive coping mechanisms, right? Like a little extra food that you should eat, or a little more alcohol than you should drink, and so on and so forth, right? So this understanding helps us to avoid all that, helps us to work around all that, helps us to have a more healthy relationship with all that, right? But again, what it does then is it facilitates the ability, especially as parents, it facilitates the ability to then carry that into our relationship with our children, and therefore create a natural level of attunement, right? It's not something you even have to try at that point. It's just something that naturally occurs. And when that happens, that is where you are going to do enormous things for your child, or children. Right, that is where you really take it to kind of the next level, as they say, right? Because again, you're now no longer just in this automatic reactive cycle of discipline, or behavior discipline, behavior discipline, behavior discipline, right? Again, going back to Dr. Siegel and Dr. Tina Payne Bryson, they've written a couple of amazing books, one of which is called No Drama Discipline, in which they remind us as parents that, the word discipline is really, much more about teaching than it is about anything else, right? But yet we often think of discipline as, punishment, right? And that alone, right? Just being able to see that, right? And this comes through the ability to be present with ourselves and to be non-judging of ourselves and to open ourselves to every experience that we're having, right? Then we can kind of see how every behavioral thing that happens with our children becomes an opportunity to teach them something, right? As opposed to just correct something or fix something, right? And once we can see that, that's when you're getting deeper into it. You're going deeper into that level of attunement that I'm talking about, that is, so much more valuable to a child in the long run than is, I told you not to do that, or what have you, right? So if you got any questions, if you'd like to know some of the names of some of these books, or if you'd like to talk about this some more, find out about some of the basic exercises that I'm talking about to get started with practicing this thing called mindfulness and creating a personality trait through this practice, I'd be more than happy to talk to you. Just drop a comment below, send me a direct message, reply to this email, wherever you're seeing this, send me an email at art@artburnscoaching.com. Wherever you're seeing this, get in touch with me. Let me send you some stuff, and let's talk a little bit, okay? And you can also, it's very, very simple. Once you start practicing these things, it's very simple to then teach your children how to practice these things, right? And that's where you take it to another level, and you get to kind of help your children to process some of the things that they're going through in a very adaptive and helpful way, rather than just kind of trial and error, which is the way most kids wind up learning. And unfortunately, unfortunately, there's a lot more error than there are success. So anyway, love it. Love to help you out. Please drop a comment below. Send me a direct message. Let's get into a conversation. Thank you very much for listening. I wish you well. Take care.